I just remembered uh, an incident in Madaraka Estate where I would say that I had a temporary madness. Temporary madness is also known as temporary insanity. I think what made me remember is that incident in Narok, where the video are showing very clearly that this police officer had a gun, a self-loading rifle, and he had this self-loading rifle, and he he was being attacked, and some or two people are trying to shield him, and then he saw that one as a chance to go away, and then the Maasai mob attacked him. And in all this time, you can see that he controlled himself not to have used the gun. I I would call him a hero because if it were me with that gun, with those people, a gun holds 32 bullets. I can assure you that 32 people would be lying in the mortuary and I'd be safe, maybe in the cells awaiting court case. But I want to say that that Askari was very brave and he joins the wreck company people that I had praised before. Now, I want to give that example of my temporary insanity in Madaraka. While I was a police officer, I used to suffer from temporary insanity 3 or 4 times a year. But since I left work, if I'm not wrong, I've suffered temporary insanity once in a decade. Once in a decade. So there's a time I had a bout of temporary insanity in Madaraka. Temporary insanity is both a legal and medical problem. It's both a legal and a medical problem. But the problem with temporary insanity is that it is really very hard to prove both legally and medically. We start with medically. Medically, you know, for somebody who has a mental problem, a prolonged mental problem, that one we can say that a psychiatrist can identify it, and a psychiatrist can treat it. But temporary insanity happens. If it takes long, it takes 10 minutes. The longest it can take is 10 minutes. In fact, those people who have suffered from temporary insanity, for an example, a police officer or a security officer who has suffered temporary insanity, this is what leads them to be. One, after you have done what you have done, you become conscious of what you have done and its implication. And then after those 10 minutes, whatever you do after that is a resultant of now you have realized. For example, you have issues with somebody. He or she gives you hell on earth. And one time he or she makes you be temporary insane. And in that time of temporary insanity, you maybe kill that person. And then after realizing that you have killed that person, then you either commit suicide, or you either commit suicide, or if you have a gun, you start shooting anyhowly. I have in mind the constable in Kabete who had the differences with his wife or spouse, and then went along Wayaki Way and started shooting at vehicles that were passing by, whereby costing the life of a border person. I'm also talking about a long time ago of an AP who got annoyed at Mutindwa in Riruta Kawangware, near Mid Hill Hospital. He got annoyed and went to the nearby AP camp and came back with a G3, where he started shooting anyhowly. You see, after you have done, you know the cases in Kenya, one murder and 100 murders, just the sentence is the same. So once you have realized you have killed somebody, then from there you know that you are going to face the hangman. So even if you kill 20 or whatever, you'll still face the hangman, and that is where you find the indiscriminatory shooting. But this indiscriminatory shooting is not temporary madness. It is realization that your life is now gone. So you either take your life or you kill, or both. And as I said, it is really very hard to identify temporary madness, although it is a temporary mental status. Then that is it is really hard to both legally and medically. How can you prove to a doctor? Because if you are mentally sick, the doctor can atapima wewe na apate your mental status. Legally, how can a court be convinced that you are mad for 2 or 3 days without a doctor's whatever? But then let me start the long story of how I got it and how I almost went to jail for it. It happened that I was staying at my house, which is at which was at Riruta Satellite. I got a phone call from the coordinator of one of the courts in Madaraka. This court is next to a church, and it is also next to Madaraka Primary School. The name of the court it's the same name as that church. I think it was so called because it is neighboring the church. I've forgotten because I've stayed for long without going to Madaraka. So the coordinator of that called me and told me that he had he was going to collect security money from the residents of that court, and would I that evening join him? Would I go to Madaraka, go and join him so that they pay security money earlier than even the end of the month? I said yes. And my policy then was that whatever money I got, I used to pay the guards first. Because on a good month, at the end of the month, I would have collected 60% of what was required of me. Or is it 60%? No, 60 is a lower number. 60s on the lower one. But what I would say is that whatever they gave me was enough to pay my house rent and pay all the guards. And then by 5th, I'd be paid 90%. And then the 10% would be hanging, would be pushed forward, so and so and so and whatever. I think that is what the best way to put it. I used to get most of the money. By the end of the month, I would get something to pay all the guards plus my house. Then by 5th, I would be paid up to 90%. So 10% would go on, would be put forward. Or even as you are one day you'll find yourself supervising the security in Madaraka Estate, you'd get somebody who has, or a court that was having an outstanding amount, and they would give you that outstanding, they would reduce that outstanding money or give it to you. That was something like 12th to 24th. So I used to use that money for expenses, normal expenses, regular expenses. So as I said, I was called a few days to the end of the month and was requested to go to that court to get the money, earlier. And as I used to supervise those guards, I had studied them. First of all, I rarely employed anybody who took alcohol. But there are those ones who did not take alcohol because they did not have money. But once they start earning, they take alcohol. So I used to arrange it in such a way that those who took alcohol, I'd pay them last. And I would not pay them together. I would pay sparingly. For example, when his day for going for the 4 days off has reached, that is when I would, when his 4 days of off had reached, is when I would give him his salary. Then he would take the 4 days drinking, and the salary of a watchman or a security guard cannot last more than 4 days. They cannot last more than 4 days. So that is the trick I used to. But we used to have these good guards, whom even if you pay him in advance, there'll be no problem. So I organized for guards who I knew were not troublesome, and included in these guards was one guard who was a Borana, who was a Borana. I approached him, told him that I was to pay him earlier. Imagine on 25th, 26th, we are paying somebody his salary for that month instead of waiting until end of the month. Because I believed if I used to get last. I used to get last, as I've said. So I told him, I told others that we meet at such and such a place. He used to work at, there is this court that is between the Strathmore University, and there is this court that is there between Strathmore University and MF46. He used to work there. So I called him, took him to, I called him, and then I took him to that place and told him to wait. At 7 p.m., the coordinator of that court came. He drove in, he found me at the gate with the guards. There were several guards because there were those guards who work there. And then there is also the guards who don't work there, whom I had said that they'd come. Now, what I had told those who work there is that this guard has a problem, so I'm paying him first, but at the end of the month, I'll pay you. That is what I had talked to the guards in that court. So this fellow was a day guard. He came and we stayed with him at the gate. The coordinator came and said, "Oh, so you are around here." That was around 7 p.m. At 7 p.m., he told me that give me 1 hour, I'll bring the money to you. Now, a person who stays in Kibra, going to his house at 8, leaving Madaraka at 8, he'll reach his house at 9, which is okay for somebody who stays in Kibra. Still early. But a person staying in Kibra, going to his house past midnight, it's dangerous to him. So what did I do? What I did was we waited until 8. The coordinator did not come. We stayed, that was 8, he did not come. I gave him 1 hour. At 9 p.m., I went to his house. And the place he stayed, I think he still stays there because those are houses that people are buying. The place he stayed, when you go from the gate, you approach the rooms first before you reach the sitting room. So I could see the whole house. He stayed on the ground floor. I saw the whole house had no electricity, or the lights were put off. That was 9 p.m. I decided it was not safe. I decided I decided not to ring the bell or even call him because it is him who called me and he had gone to sleep. If it is me who had suggested, I would have assumed that he had forgotten. So I decided to go and tell those people what had happened. The others said that it was safe for them to leave at that time and go home. They understood and left. But this Borana fellow started arguing with me there. You see, he's working in a different court. We are meeting in a different, I think it is called Beula Court. Yeah, Beula Court. Because there is a church called Beula, but I'm not sure as of the time of recording. So we argued there, and he's from where we are arguing. It is something like half a kilometer, from where he works. He started, this thing is there with the Nairobians. Nairobians, you don't tell him come on 25th, come on Wednesday. If you tell Nairobian come on Wednesday, I think I'll give you 1,000. Come on Wednesday, I think I'll give you 1,000. A Nairobian will hear, no, if you tell a Nairobian come on Wednesday, I may give you 1,000 shillings. A Nairobian hears that come on Wednesday, I will give you at least 1,000 shillings. That is how Nairobians understand. So what happened? He came expecting money. I tried to reason with him. He told me to ring the coordinator. I said no. He came, talked to me when you are here, left me, went into the house, and he said 1 hour. I gave him another hour. He didn't come. Now, after the second hour, when I went to check, all the electricity in his house, all the lights in his house were switched off. So I cannot call him. The fellow started, oh, why was it a must that I was to get money today? Was it whatever? First of all, I had already told him that since we are late, there are these spoiled vehicles. We have some spoiled vehicles whose doors are not closed, and of which I knew guards would wait until when everybody was not there, and then they would sleep in them. I told him to look for one and sleep there. He said, no, give me the money you promised me. If you don't, he started making. So I left Beula Court. I don't know whether it is Beula, but let me just call it that. I left that court and went to another court. Now, this court, was the coordinator there is called Weche. There's a time I asked him if he's related to Mick Weche. He said that he's related to Mick Weche. I've never asked Mick Weche whether he's related to the other Weche, but this other Weche claimed that Mick Weche was his uncle. I still am not sure whether I'm not sure whether he's related, because Weche is Weche alone. His siblings do not have the name. It's like me. All my cousins, and I'm not even talking of my brothers, all my cousins have got the name JI-TENGE. All my cousins have got the name JI-TENGE. So there's those families that extend a family name. But Weche, the brother who is a pastor, is Patrick Olei. So you find that that is why I had doubt of that. So we went to that court where the coordinator was Weche, but not the Weche's court or Mick Weche. We went there, the fellow was still disturbing me. That was around 11. That was around 11. The fellow was around disturbing me, making a lot of noise. And what I used to do those days, when I visited that place at around midnight, I would go around, talk to each and every guard personally. That is bind, know how. I mean, talk. You don't just supervise and whatever. You also have to invest to be concerned about his welfare. If he has a family, the kids, how are they doing? Whatever you talk, personal issues. Then I would tell them that I'm headed home, and once I reach home, I'll call them to tell them I've arrived safely. So after talking to them, as I reached that place, this fellow came and I told him I had just made a decision that I would ignore him, then take a matatu to town, then from town to Riruta, take another matatu, just leave it that way. But he must have read my mind because he was following me all the courts that I was going and making noise. And then when we reached that court, which was the last one because there was no other court that I would go to before boarding the vehicle to go home, he picked a wooden plaque, picked it, and headed to one of the vehicles. He told me that he is going to break all the windows and windscreens of all the vehicles in that parking lot. And he took, if you know these GSU buttons that, but it was a 4x4 wooden plaque like that. So he was headed that. I trapped him. I placed a leg before him. Then he fell down. I took that bow, started hitting him the way you would hit a snake, repeatedly, and shouting, Mwizi, Mwizi, Mwizi. People came out. Funny thing, people surrounded us, but nobody was taking any effort to stop us, and nobody was taking any effort to beat. You know, in other places, you just say Mwizi and somebody's dead. But then, this guard had been brought in by a guard who was his brother-in-law. So this thing was heard throughout Madaraka. So you can imagine beating somebody with that until the whole estate comes. Then his brother-in-law came and said, huyu sio mwizi, huyu ni shemeji yangu. It ended there. And the fellow was so swollen, I'm sure that he regretted what he had done. I'm sure he regretted. The story would have ended there. But then, aside, just parking there was a taxi driver. This taxi driver had brought, it was late. So a taxi driver had brought a resident there. The resident had entered his house. So as the taxi driver was about to leave, he noticed a commotion when we were arguing, and he decided to watch and see Afro cinema. I can tell you for sure, if you have worked in the police force, you have no friends. Because as we were arguing and as we were whatever before he wanted to smash the windscreens, uh, before he smashed the windscreen, before he attempted to smash the windscreen, I had used all tricks to cool him. I had begged him. I had, they use it, they call it what? Stick and carrot. I had tried to talk to talk to sweet talk him. I had tried to reason with him. I had tried even to remind him, unajua mimi nilikuwa polisi na sasa nikikupeleka hapa Nyayo utashikwa na so this taxi driver selectively chose words. He said I was here. He told everybody I was parking. You see my vehicle here, my taxi here. I was parked here. I saw everything. And you see, if I were to be taken to court, his evidence would have jailed me. But his decision were based on his hatred of police officers. So people told him, okay, you are here. You're the only other person who saw everything before he started there. He said, this fellow was asking his boss for his money. And the boss was telling him, I used to be a police officer. Hakuna pahali utanipeleka, hata sasa nikikupeleka Nyayo. You see, yes, there is a time I said that. But you see, that is a time when I tried to tell him, it is not me who decided to come. It is and why didn't you call him? Oh, yeah, this fellow, he refused to reason. I tried, after reasoning with him, I tried to beg him. If you make a noise, people will, he didn't want to hear. I don't care whether people will come or anything. Me, I just concerned vile ulinidanganya ati nakuja kuchukua pesa, vile umecheleweshwa. Even at that time, I was cool. It is only that when he headed for, and I saw him, you see, he's a Borana and a Muslim. And even if he had taken alcohol, the time and the coldness that we had stayed there was so long that alcohol, and also he had also been reasoning and whatever. It's only when I told him that, no, today it seems we are not going to get money until I organize again. That is when he became temporary insane. But his temporary insanity took more than an hour, up to the extent that he reached a place when he wanted to smash those things. So, in the case of even trying to sweet talk him, in the instance where I was trying to cool him and whatever, I tried all the tricks. I tried everything, including saying that, do you know that I can just go to the police station, call police officers, and they put you in for creating disturbance. That is the only piece. And that is what is called propaganda. Propaganda is telling the truth, but you select some issues. You see, A, B, C, D. If you select 3 words from the alphabetical, you just take A, and you take B, place it down there. You take A, you place it down there. You take a D, place it down there. You see, the alphabet will be bad. But if you take other words, it will mean. So this fellow had just selected. And you see, there was that mob. Sema ukweli. Si ulisema ulikuwa polisi. Si ulisema ulikuwa sijui OCS, sijui nini. That is what the taxi man was saying. Hey, people said, kumbe unakuwa, we usually handle a madman. Then that is the time when they started telling the Borana fellow to go and report the assault to the police at Nyayo House. He was not interested. He said, no, me, I'm only interested in my money. He said, no, you must go and report. They even assured him that if he reports, they will assist him. People who were in the house during that confrontation were assuring him. Then the taxi driver told him, I can even give you a lift to Nyayo Stadium Police Station. The guard entered the taxi went all the way to, well, he was dropped outside Nyayo police station, Nyayo Stadium police station. On my part, I went round and completed what I wanted to complete. And then I decided, instead of taking a matatu from Madaraka, let me go to the police station and see if he has reported there. I was so mad that even I told those people that I'm going to that police station to see if he has reported. And I went just outside the police station. I found him. He was now coming out of the police station. He was now coming out of the police station after making the report, which was not written. Now, after the taxi driver had dropped him, he went and reported to the police station, and the police station there knew him. Sema, hey, huyo jamaa akiwa polisi alikuwaga wazimu. Huyo ndio umesumbuana na yeye. Then they asked him in my absence. They asked him in my absence what he really wanted. He said he just wanted his pay and nothing more. Said he wanted his pay and nothing. So akikupatia mshahara huna shida, said. And you see, they had not even talked to me. They had not done whatever. They were not even sure whether I did it or not. Then they told him, you just go and talk to him nicely. That is when he met me out there, and I told him, let us go back. And telling him, let us go back, he is the one who was now trembling because of three things. One, before he became mad and infected me with the madness, I had told him something about police. And when he went there, the people told him, huyo wazimwe, ai, nauli hii. Si akupatie tu pesa zako wachane naye. That is the second time. And that time he's meeting me and I'm telling him, let us go back to the station. When we went back to the station and I talked to the police, told them what had happened. They told me, that was your mistake. You should have waited until he broke one windscreen, just one. Then you would have beaten him and called people and said, Muizi. Even if you would have been killed, there is evidence of. Now, what you are saying is your word against his. And you have noticed that Raia wamekugeuka. So there is no way you are something. Then he was asked, what do you want to say? What do you want to be done? The fellow was confused. Was confused because of the atmosphere that was there. And the police were now saying that my mistake was to prevent him from breaking the windscreen. I should have waited for him just to break one, just one. Then even if he would have been killed, there would be no case. Leaving at that, he said he just wanted his salary. And I told him, I'm going to pay you your salary and I'm going to terminate your work. I told him that in the police station. It was obvious we could not work together. But then he went to Kibra and found people who are called human rights. Hey, human rights said, okay, you reported at Nyayo. It was not reported there. Report it to us. He reported there, made a report. It was the human rights organization now wrote that. They wanted to follow it up. Hey, they wrote to me. And I knew things were not good. They wrote to me and I knew things were not good. So I just knew that my days in jail were approaching. And you see, there is nothing as bad as the human rights people saying that the police are trying to protect a former police officer, a former senior officer. So I just called his brother-in-law, the brother-in-law who stopped me from mugging him, a brother-in-law who had begged me. They used to stay in a single room. I was saying that I'm with his sister here, and we feel he should get a job so that he gets his own room. So I told him, okay, you are congested in the house. You're congested in the house. You wanted space. I assisted you. Now I am going to jail because of you. And you see that brother-in-law of his uh, was a sort of a supervisor of others, because I used to tell him that as others were working, he would every night walk throughout the estate to see them, to check them, to see the person who has escaped, to see if there is anybody with any problem or whatever, or even to address any complaint that was of emergency, either from the guards or uh, from from the guards or from the residents. So it was one of the time. It was one of the time when he was going around that he saw what was happening. So I told him, "I'm going to jail because of you." So nothing more, nothing less. He told me, "Okay, let us think about it." Um, he went to his brother-in-law, the brother to his wife. That was his initiative. It was not mine. Me, I had already given up. I was just waiting for jail. Because as I'll repeat, imagine somebody reporting that this is a former police officer, former senior police officer who has uh, attacked somebody, grievous bodily harm to somebody, and the case has been taken to the police, and the police did not even book it in the OB. So you could see the ripple effect. And I had just given up hope. I was mentally now preparing myself for life in jail. Then one day, this fellow came with a bunch of papers. He took his brother-in-law to hospital. He was treated. Everything was written. He paid for everything. He did that and whatever. And then he went, had the doctor's letter concerning the sickness or whatever, everything, whatever. Then he came with them to me and said, "You are like a father to me. If I would not have brought him, this thing would not have happened. If he would have listened to you, nothing would have happened. But it has happened. The only thing is to stop it. You cannot go to jail because of this." He showed me everything, and he burned them in my presence. He burned them in my presence. And then he went back to the brother-in-law and said, "There is nowhere you can take the case because I have burned the document." Yeah, that is the story of temporary madness. I just found myself to be mad out of nowhere, out of no. And if I were to go to court, how would I have proven to the court that I had a temporary madness that time? Especially if the taxi driver would have said what he said, and you see, the taxi driver had talked in such a way that he chose his words properly. I think if there is a police officer watching me, sometimes msikue kali sana kwa watu. You fall in the wrong hands, raia wanakugeuka mbaya sana. And nothing pleases them than jailing a police officer, whether current or ex.